Hello and welcome. In this lecture we're going to be getting line of sight to our player from the enemy so that we are able as the player to hide behind obstacles and not have that enemy follow us, not have it keep aiming at us until we pop back out and are visible to them. So you can see here I've hidden behind a corner and he can't find me. Let's dive in and see how this can be done using Unreal's tools. So it's not ideal that this enemy AI can currently follow us round corners no matter how far we go, no matter how much we hide behind pillars, it's still going to find us, it's still going to come and keep aiming at us. We want to correct that. And we're going to do this by checking the line of sight from the enemy to the player. Now, as many things here in Unreal, there is already a function for this in the AI controller.h called line of sight. And if you go and search for that, you can find that there's a function that returns a Boolean, so telling us whether or not we have line of sight, and then it takes the actor that we should try to check for line of sight to. And it automatically takes into account things like the eye position of the pawn in question. All this sort of stuff is already coded into Unreal. It's really cool. So it should be fairly straightforward. If we go over to our AI controller.cpp, what we basically want to do is change things up in tick, so that we first of all do an if line of sight. Then what we want to do, if we've got line of sight, is we want to move to, and we want to set focus. However, if we do not, so in the else, what we want to do is clear focus. Remember, we saw that function before, and we want to do the, let's see, the stop movement, basically. And that's another function that exists that we haven't seen yet. So what I'm going to do here is I can challenge you to implement the whole of this yourself if you feel confident. Otherwise, this else is the more complex bit that we haven't seen before, because the other two, we've already done a move to actor, we've already done our set focus, we've done that before, and there's just this if line of sight, which we have just seen. Is pretty straightforward. You could implement that. But how about this else? Let's give a go at implementing just the else clause. It's not going to compile because you obviously need an if before an else, but let's go and just write out the else clause. So the first thing, clearing focus. Basically, we're saying stop trying to track the player because you can't see the player. You shouldn't be giving off the impression that you know where the player is, even though the AI obviously can because it can access the player's location and so on and so forth. But we need to give the illusion that the AI only knows as much as it can see. So what we're going to do is we're going to call to clear focus, and if we go over to the AI controller.h and have a look at clear focus, you can see that it takes in the priority that we need to clear. Now, a reminder that these priorities are basically different levels of focus. So we have typically default movement and gameplay being the highest priority thing. And what we set by default is gameplay priority. So what we want to do is clear the gameplay priority, which means that if we have focus based on movement, for example, if our AI then wants to move back to its guard point, then that focus will not be cleared and it will be off moving back to its guarding point. So that's the way focus works. That's the way the priority system works there. So what we just want to do is copy this EAI focus priority : gameplay. And that is the priority that we're wanting to clear on this line here. And then the other thing is to stop the movement. So we want to go over to the AI control.h again and have a look at the stop movement. And here, sure enough, there is a simple no arguments function called stop movement, which allows us to do just that. So there you go. That is basically the else statement written. So now it just remains a challenge for you to implement the if portion with the if line of sight and the move to and set focus. And you basically want to remove this code here. I'm just going to comment it out and sort out where you want that to be. So pause the video, no challenge slide here. Just go and implement these 3 lines for yourself. Okay, welcome back. So let's start with our if. So if, open brackets, line of sight to, and then we want to do line of sight to the actor, which is the player pawn that we want to get access to. So let's just uncomment that player pawn here. And it's mucked up our indentation a little. Let's fix that. And then we want our brackets, our curly brackets here. And we want to do a move to actor. Well, in fact, we can just copy and uncomment our move to actor here. And we want to uncomment it. Yes, there we go. And the focus, we can move that as well. Now, the focus, it doesn't matter whether you do it before or after move to actor, because while move to actor does set a focus, it set it to a lower priority, the movement focus rather than the gameplay focus, so it doesn't matter which order we do those two operations in. And then finally, we can remove this commented out line where we were getting the player pawn in begin play because we no longer need it. And everything's in tick now, so we could remove begin play. I'm going to leave it around in case we need it later on, just to save me the hassle of adding it back in. Let's head over to Unreal and compile. And when that's done, let's play. So let's see if we can hide from this actor. I'm going to try and move around the corners reasonably quickly. This is a little bit tricky because they can move just as fast as you can. But if you get round a corner like that, there you go. He's lost sight of me. He's stopped trying to chase me. I can just peek around the corner and see that as I'm moving, he's not changing his aiming because we've cleared the focus. I can peek around the corner from the other side. Let's see, peek around over here. There you go. You can see he's still aiming at the last location where I was. But if I pop up into sight, then he carries on aiming and moves within the acceptance radius. Talking of which, I want that acceptance radius to be configurable by the designer. So let's move it into a U property. I'm going to create a private section here with a U property, which is going to be an edit anywhere. And we want that to be a float called acceptance radius and give it the default value of 200. And then this acceptance radius, we can go ahead and use in our move to actor. And if you compile that, it's going to give you exactly the same behavior, except now that you can change that in the AI controller blueprint. So that's it for this lecture. We have discovered that line of sight function allowing us to check whether the AI can or cannot see something. And we've implemented this basic hiding functionality so the AI doesn't follow us when it can't see us. Next lecture, we're going to take things up a notch from this custom programmed AI and use behavior trees, a really powerful tool in Unreal, to make our AIs just that much cooler.